Okay, we're going to start. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another ATA webinar. Thank you for joining us this evening. Just a few housekeeping. We're going to go through the presentation tonight, and then we're going to take Q&A. If you look on the bottom of your toolbar, there is a Q&A icon. Please type your questions in there or in chat, and we will take your questions after the presentation. Thank you so much, and let's get ready to go. So I would like to introduce to you our president, Roxanne Aaron. She's going to welcome you this evening.
Good evening, and welcome to the American Tennis Association. Do you know that the American Tennis Association is the oldest African-American sports organization in the U.S.? We were founded in 1916, and we are 104 years old. Can you believe it? Tonight, I am so honored to be here tonight to share with you stories about pioneers in tennis. A lot of times we talked about the usual suspects. We talked about Arthur Ashe. We talked about Althea Gibson. But there are other pioneers that were wonderful in their activities on community tennis and also junior tennis. So I am very happy tonight to be here so you can sit back and enjoy it. And now I'd like to introduce Marty Woods, who will tell you a little bit more about the Pete Brown program.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Roxanne. First of all, I wanted to start off by thanking the American Tennis Association, Roxanne and her team, for spreading this great event and putting the spotlight on great legends that are here in Southern California. I really appreciate that. And I think this is well needed and deserved in this area. The second thing I want to do is, number one, talk to you guys about the Pete Brown Junior Tennis Program. The Pete Brown Junior Tennis Program is located in Los Angeles, California. And the Pete Brown program is a year-round tennis and academic support program. This tennis program, we offer free year-round tennis and academic support. And this program is mainly for underserved and minority children. And there's gangs in the area. There's rival gangs in the area. So what we do is we offer a safe haven for these kids. And we never turn any kids down, even whether or not it's their financial situation or whether or not they've hit a ball or not. So everything from our program is free, whether it's the coaching, the shoes, the attire. So we rely on donations from great individuals, good-hearted individuals that want to see an impact in our community. So our basic goal is to create a well-rounded, productive citizen that'll achieve great things in our community. So really appreciate this, and thanks for this opportunity. And now I wanted to turn this over to one of our Pete Brown Junior Tennis Program board members, Crystal Mitchell, to kind of get this thing started. So thanks a lot for allowing me this time, and look forward to a great show here. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Crystal Mitchell, and I am the treasurer for Pete Brown Junior Tennis Program. And we're really excited, primarily because this is a monumental moment for us as well. We've become a club, a member of the American Tennis Association, and we're looking forward to some amazing partnerships and doing projects together. And this is one of our first projects. And so we're really excited about honoring those in our own personal lives, our own personal communities who have played on our local tennis courts and have done some miraculous things in our community. And so now we want to share that with you. So we have 4 panelists that's going to present our honorees and our legends, and they're going to share some very special times that they have had with these 4 amazing tennis players. Not only that did they just love the sport of tennis, but they also had personal relationships with them, and they had very active lives, and they used their talents to share and to introduce the sport to everyone else. So we're excited and we are ready to go. So our very first honoree, we're going to set up, and our panelist, Jeff Clemens, who is connected to the individual. Pete Brown, and he's going to share some amazing stories about himself and Pete. But first, let me share about Jeff Clemens. So Jeff has been, he's my friendly, gentle giant over at Harvard Park, and I love Jeff to death. I've seen him play. He is a tennis enthusiast. He has amazing tennis knowledge, and he has served as a board member of the Pacific Coast of the PCC. And so he met Pete Brown in 1976, and he immediately admired and respected him for his tennis knowledge and supportive demeanor. Jeff soon began to work closely with Pete in a leadership capacity on behalf of the Harvard Tennis Club organization, which continued for many years until Pete's passing. Jeff considered Pete as his mentor, advisor, and a hero at the Harvard Tennis Club. So welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Crystal, for that kind introduction. What I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about Pete's background, and I'll go through that part, and then I'll kind of tell you some interesting stories about things you may not have known about Pete. But let me go right into his background. Pete was born in Blythe, California. After living in Riverside for a short time, his family moved to Lake Elsinore, where he attended high school, participating in a variety of sports. He earned 8 varsity letters in different sports there. He received, which is a major award, the prestigious Outstanding Athlete of the Year award from that high school, and you'll find out later on why. A lot of this information is in the website Pete Brown Junior Tennis Program that Marty runs now, but I'm highlighting some of the features in there. So after high school, Pete served in the military, and can you believe it? He was in the R2 as an artillery officer. So I know he was tough, but he never threatened us on the tennis courts. But he had the background. He completed his education at Cal State. Actually, it was called Los Angeles State College, and I went to Long Beach State College, and we were competitors at that time. Not with Pete, but the schools. In this area. Those are not familiar with this area. Anyway. Pete went on to become a teacher at Fremont High School. That was a very powerful, and still is a very powerful high school, and he was a teacher there. Matter of fact, and this was starting in 1960. Many of you were not even born during that time. But during his 11-year tenure, he coached the tennis team, the basketball team, and the cross-country teams. In 1971, the Fremont team won the Southern League Championship in basketball, and his tennis team went on to a perfect 14-0 season record. This was all under Pete's leadership. Later, after leaving Fremont High School, Pete accepted a position at Los Angeles Trade Tech College, where he spent over 20 years as a tennis and a wrestling coach. So you know that you get into a little scuffle with Pete out there, you may not end up too well. Anyway, so he won they won the championship titles there, and he retired from LA Trade Tech in 1991. Pete continued to coach the Trade Tech tennis team, but his real focus was on exposing kids to tennis, and working with them and helping them out, in particular children in the inner city. And that's where that's kind of about the time I met Pete during that time period. Pete, he worked tirelessly with the juniors, and that's where you would see him with all the time with the juniors, giving them advice and giving them pointers and so on, and taking them to tennis tournaments and buying their tennis shoes and or tennis rackets and balls and so on. And that's where he spent all of the years that we really knew him, always working with the juniors. He was the most dedicated tennis person I've ever met then and since. Maybe Marty is moving in his shoes because Marty's always out there also. So I think that was a perfect selection to follow in Pete Brown's legacy. Anyway, Pete Brown passed away in 2009, and he's survived by his wife Teresa 55 years. He has two daughters, Terry and Lynn, Terry Lynn and Vanessa Ann. He received a number of awards. Those are in the program. I won't get into those, but he received the Hall of Fame awards, Lifetime Achievement Awards, National Awards, Coach of the Year, Outstanding Teacher of the Year, a whole bunch of awards, and you can see why. And I met Pete, and I'll tell you about that. So let me go back a little bit. I met Pete back in 1976, as Crystal mentioned, at Harvard Park. And he was a legend at that time. I was an athlete, but I wasn't a big time tennis player. I just learned how to play when I got out there. Anyway, I really enjoyed playing. They had 8 courts at Harvard. And at that time, that was a tennis era where all the courts were full and 2 or 3 people were waiting on each court to play. So there was a real spectacular time. And it was a real popular event throughout all of Los Angeles in the area. Anyway, I decided to go on a vacation. And I saw Pete. It was Pete Brown and Sean Smith who were kind of running everything out there. They were the people there, the go-to people. So I told them I was going on a vacation, and when I got back, I'd be happy to get more involved in the club. So they said, "Okay, Jeff, have a good vacation." I went to Hawaii, had a good time there, and I came back. And when I got back, the first 2 people I happened to see was Pete and Sean. And I walked over to him, and Pete said, "Congratulations, Jeff." And I said, "Oh, thank you. What did I get congratulated for?" He said, "We've congratulations, you're the new president of Harvard Tennis Club." I said, "What?" My jaw dropped and I fell out. I said, "Wait a minute, I don't know. I'm not. How can I be president? I've been, haven't been here that long." And he said, "Well, you're the president." And so that year, it turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made in my life, most memorable. And I'll never forget that. Anyway, we worked I'm going to wrap it up now, but we worked and we had the PCC, which is a big tournament on the East Coast, on the West Coast here. And we had probably one of the largest attendances. We had 970 people attended, contestants in that tournament. And we had a lot of activities all over the different state, all over the different areas in the city. And we had a very wonderful tournament. So we completed that. And just to wrap it up, they elected me president the next year. So we must have done a pretty decent job. But anyway, I wanted to conclude by saying that Pete was a person, he continued to be involved. And I think that Marty Woods taking over from that legacy and continuing on is one of the great things that happened out in the Harvard Park. And I wanted to thank you guys for allowing me to talk a little bit about Pete. And it's what an honor, what a person to respect and honor. So best of luck and you all stay safe.
Thank you, Jeff. That was absolutely awesome. I'm kind of new to the Harvard Park and to the tennis here with you guys. I played tennis in high school and I played tennis in college, but I wasn't connected tennis wasn't my star sport. Skiing was, but it's been an amazing journey for the last 5 years that I've been involved, and I've met some amazing people, and I've heard so much about Pete Brown. And Marty would be the one that Pete identified him when he was a young boy, brought him into the program, and this is the result of that. It's the Marty that we all know today. And when Pete Brown was ill in 2009, he reached out to Marty to ask him to carry on his legacy. And I will say that Marty has done a phenomenal job. He and Dolores Simmons just picked up the reins, and LaRonda, and they've carried it through. So they both have done a marvelous job. So thank you, Jeff, for sharing your memories of Pete Brown. And so now we're going to move on into Mr. Theodore Ted Lumpkin. I didn't know Ted on the tennis court. I only knew Ted in the real estate world, in the business world, and everyone in the city of Los Angeles knows Ted for either he was a real estate agent, or most memorable is the fact that he was a Tuskegee Airman, and that's actually how I met him, through some friends of mine. So the panelist that's going to be speaking on him and his connection is his son, Mr. Theodore Ted Lumpkin III. So I'm going to turn it over to him, and he's obviously from great genes, because his dad was absolutely phenomenal. And the only thing I can say about Ted is he lived up the street from my brother-in-law and my sister, and they are always saying they would see Mr. Lumpkin in his white tennis short, his white cardigan, and his tennis racket. And they just thought he must be this incredible tennis player. That's all he did. So they didn't know anything else about him, just the fact that he had his white shorts on. So Ted, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, fantastic. And I learned a little bit about Pete Brown there. I didn't know he was an artillery officer. That I'm sure that helped them launching the tennis balls there. So talk a little bit about my dad. For those of you who don't know, he was a native Angelino. He actually lived in LA for over 100 years. He lived, to 4 days short of his 101st birthday. He went to Jefferson High School, and was an athlete, but not particularly of note. I think he played a lot of stuff, played basketball and what have you. But he started playing tennis after the war. And I'm not going to talk a lot about his Tuskegee Airmen stuff, because I think that's pretty well chronicled. And same thing with the real estate broker stuff. But as far as tennis goes, my mom tells stories about him, the two of them playing during when they first met, which is right after the war, late 40s there, and definitely was playing in 1948. He really got into it, though, I'd say in the late 60s, early 70s. That's certainly what I remember. And then, kept going right on through. He retired fairly early. He was 55 in 79. And he really got into it then. My mom always liked to say he was an absolutely fierce tennis player, fierce competitor. And my dad's got a couple of, one advanced degree from USC, and he treated tennis the same way that he treated his studies. He would write down notes, going through his stuff, as we, since he's passed away here now, and he's got notebooks just full of notes that'll say, when charging the net, favor your forehand, widen your stance when you're serving, keep your wrist solid on the backhand. And he would write that like 3 or 4 times, to emphasize to himself to make sure that he does that. And I must have found 5 or 6 notebooks full of that, that he wrote over the years, serve and take 3 steps in. So he was definitely intense into it. And unfortunately, the apple has fallen a long way from the tree. All 4 of his kids play. His oldest son, Tim, was a really good tennis player. But whether it's his kids or his grandkids, he was really into it, to the extent that he kind of wore us out. And so none of us really went into tennis a tremendous amount. But he definitely had us out on the court and playing. and he always wanted to play another, just one more set. I remember him saying that to me many, many times.
Hey, Ted, this is Jeff Clemens. I just wanted to interject one little thing because I was one of those guys that play, among many of us, played against Ted out in the tennis courts. And they were all of, I'm 75, and we all thought we were all about the same age. Because we would battle with Ted, and he would win sometime. Other guys would win sometime. And for many, many years, I had no idea that he was more than 25 years older than I was, Otherwise, I'd have tried to beat him more. But Ted was very competitive and an amazing tennis player for his age. It was amazing that he was that much older than us.
He won his share of tournaments, and we actually just turned over a bunch of his old trophies to Marty. And I understand you guys, the Harvard Tennis Club, are gonna be displaying those, which is just fantastic. My mom was just over the moon about that, so that's fantastic. The other thing I wanted to mention is that he was well known outside of Los Angeles, where my brother and sister live. My sister's back in New Jersey. My brother's in North Carolina, and then my sister lived in South Africa for a little while. And whenever he would show up in New Jersey or North Carolina, the local people knew that Mr. Lumpkin wasn't even going to unpack. He had all his tennis stuff in his little bag, and he would get off the airplane, show up at the house, and anybody who played tennis, nearby, he was going to drag him out there on the court and play, and then he'd come, back to the house and change and eat and what have you. And that included in Johannesburg when he went to visit my sister. My sister was telling him, "Hey, listen, when my dad gets here, he's going to want to play." And they said, "Well, it's a 16-hour flight. He's in his 70s. There's just no way that he's going to want to do that." Well, got off the airplane, straight to the tennis court. So he definitely was all about playing the tennis. The other thing is that he took a trip to Wimbledon, and I think I want to say 1997. I may be wrong on that. But my dad traveled all over the country for the Tuskegee Airmen and what have you, and so he always would travel at the drop of a hat. So one day I got a call from him, and he had just gotten back from Wimbledon, and he just acted like it was no big deal. He just decided he wanted to go, hopped on the plane, and went. But I know that was a major bucket list item for him, and I'm so happy he's able to do that. And as I mentioned, we've given the trophies to Marty. And also a really nice portrait of him in his kind of semi-tennis attire, I'll say, that Marty has now that you guys will be able to use. So yeah, my mom has mentioned several times that with all the obituaries that have been out there about my dad recently, they don't emphasize the sporting side of him. And she keeps saying he was a fierce tennis player, very competitive, and I know that's how he'd like to be remembered.
Absolutely fantastic. Your father was just part of our community. We thought he would be here forever. So we were all very saddened, but everyone remembers him in some capacity or another. And so thank you so much, Ted, for sharing your father with our community. We so appreciate it. And I'm sure as busy as he was, I hope he balanced it out and spent as much time with you guys, but we truly loved your father.
No, absolutely. Great father. No complaints there at all. Okay.
So there's one comment in the chat or in the answer, the Q&A. Just a reminder that Pete Brown was recognized by the Black Tennis Hall of Fame in 2012, a tremendous contributor to Black tennis. So we just wanted to add that, and that was from Bob Davis. Thank you, Bob. And Ted, for your dad, there is a fellow Tuskegean. Greetings from the Ohio Memorial Chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen, Columbus, Ohio. Much respect to Lieutenant Colonel Lumpkin for his service. And so that's pretty awesome. All this Black history and these Black incredible individuals that contribute so much to our community. So we're going to move on to our next panelist, and that is Mr. Henry Branton, and he's going to talk about his connection to Hollis Smith. Henry himself is a legend within the community, Black tennis as well. He is a two-time national champion as a member of the Stanford University's tennis team, and after a brief stint on the Pro Tour, Henry became the first Black tennis coach in the Atlantic Coast Conference, leading North Carolina State Wolfpack. He coached numerous players who have won national titles, including several players who rose to the top 10 national and one who reached the #1 junior ranking under his tutelage. He learned to play tennis at Rancho Cienega and tennis court. And it was there that he became intrigued with the always dapper Go for Broke player and president of the club, Hollis Smith. So Henry, welcome, and we look forward to hearing about Mr. Hollis Smith.
Thank you, Crystal, and thanks for everybody for having me. I'm really excited to talk about one of the people who I grew up and who I was really a fan of and who had an impact on my life, Mr. Hollis Smith. And today I've got on my pink shirt with my collar up to really salute Mr. Smith. So I will say that some of my role models, such as Barack Obama, Arthur Ashe, and now Nelson Mandela, are people that break barriers on the world stage. And you can't help but be inspired by the many obstacles they have overcome to reach the goals that before their existence were thought to be unimaginable. Then there are people who are no less challenged, but still take the world by storm and live in your community. And for that, your community is never the same. These men being honored on this stage today are indeed bigger than life to me because they all impacted my life tremendously. Mr. Brown, who treated me as his #1 recruit and then told me I couldn't go to Trade Tech to play for him. I had to go to Stanford. Mr. Lumpkin, who I used to speak to on the weekends at Harvard, as I shared many classes with his daughter Ellen at Crenshaw High School. And Mr. Simmons, who was my doubles partner every Friday when I was in LA as my pro doubles career was ending, and who was a sounding board for my next steps in life. And then there was Hollis Smith. Hollis was a true Renaissance man. He would tell me about growing up in the Jim Crow South, where the only tennis he saw was for the wealthy and the white, and how wrong he thought that was. He would tell me stories of watching Big Bill Tilden in the movie theater with those smooth strokes, wearing freshly ironed whites. He would say, "That big dude moves like a ballerina." He was smitten with the game, and he knew that when he grew up, first chance he got, he was going to be a tennis player. So when an opportunity arose for the electrical engineering major from Tennessee State to come west and work in the aerospace and electronics industry, he took it, and the tennis world was never the same. He became a fine and accomplished player, winning countless senior tournaments and earning national rankings. That would have been a great story, but if you knew Hollis, you knew he had bigger goals in mind than his own personal success. He became president of Rancho Cienega Tennis Club, and he welcomed all to come out to Rancho and play. But then again, this wouldn't be enough for Hollis. Hollis became a fixture in the Southern California tennis world, becoming president of the LA Muni Tennis Association and the National Public Parks Tennis Championship, and helped to organize the initial local chapter of the National Junior Tennis League, which my sister participated in. Hollis was a role model because he constantly broke down so many barriers. He was simply a superhero in the Black tennis community. The people he touched through his work in making tennis accessible to everyone have went on to achieve in a manner that is both significant and consequential. My connection to Hollis was immeasurable in how it impacted my own life. He had his own style, and I would love it. You would often see me come to the courts wearing sweaters, not jackets, like Hollis. On warmer days, it was sweater vests, like Hollis. And once the match got going, it was often the collar up on the shirt. Like you know, like you know it, Hollis Smith. When I was 15, he pulled me aside and asked if I wanted to go to tennis camp. I said, of course. He had gotten a group of businessmen and an organization to purchase a spot at Tony Trabid's tennis camp, which was the ultra high end of tennis babysitting for the rich. Before I went, a woman took me shopping, and those who know me know that that wasn't going to turn out well at all. With my penchant for high end and Italian tennis gear, I saw Hollis a few days later, and he just laughed. He said, "Don't worry, I'll speak to them. You will be clean." I went. Tony Trabert worked with me every day. My game soared. When I came back, Hollis pulled me over. He said, "Did you smack the ball? Did you just hit it hard?" I said, "Yes." "Did you hobnob with the Beverly Hills crowd as the only black in the crowd?" I said, "Yes." "And did you win the tournament?" I said, "Yes." It was Hollis's way of pushing integration and letting people know where we belonged in the sport. Another time at the National Public Parks Tournament in Cleveland, since I hadn't checked into my room and I hadn't really traveled with the delegation, there was an assumption I wasn't going, and there was a waiting list and they were going to give my spot away. Hollis heard about it, and it was an absolute non-starter for him. He told the people at the desk, "Henry Brandon will be here and he will be clean." When I arrived, he pulled me aside and told me of the incident. At the time, I had very little motivation to play any singles event and wouldn't have really been bothered if it hadn't worked out. But at the same time, my doubles partner who had won the sectionals with Larry Barnett had pulled out to go to a bigger tournament. So I was only entered in the singles. And after all, I was in Cleveland. So let's do this. Hollis gave me a little pep talk, and I upset the seeded player in the first round who had tried to get me out of the tournament. And I ended up going deep in the tournament. It was probably my last big single showing in a national tournament. Thank you, Hollis. Maybe 15 years ago, when I was living in Palm Springs part-time, I met him to play doubles at his club at Indian Wells. I was a little wary because I really didn't play tennis anymore. Hollis just told me, "Just hit the ball hard and we'll have fun." There was a point in the match where, it started to get a little tight and I started pushing. He looked over at me and he said, "Just smack it." And I did. We dominated. It was his way of showing the Palm Springs crowd he wasn't an anomaly. There were other black players like him, successful in business and great tennis players. It was a lot of fun. The last time I saw Hollis, sadly, was at an award ceremony where we were both being honored. He was so happy because the players being honored was like a realization of his master plan. Black players from the public parks that had went on to successfully play pro tennis. Marcel Freeman showed off his Davis Cup uniform, and Hollis beamed. Black players like Jerome Jones, Troy Collins, and Marty Woods, who were growing the game of tennis and passing on their knowledge. Hollis beamed. Pro tennis players like Rick Jones, Warwick Jones, who had a successful high-level career in the medical field after tennis. Hollis beamed. And Maurice Hunter, who was ranked #1 in the country in senior tennis, carrying on that legacy that Hollis started. Hollis was bursting with pride. He helped to integrate tennis, and now this was the highest level of success on display. Hollis was a rare man, and he had such vision and talent. He was smart, he was an organizer, he was committed, he had passion. He opened up tennis in a way that no one expected and no one knew how to do. The Municipal Advisory Board recognized his contributions to the Los Angeles Tennis Association. The National Parks Tennis Association and the USTA established the Hollis Smith Sportsmanship Award, with Hollis being the first honoree. Later, the recognition was changed to the Hollis Smith Lifetime Achievement Award, and among the winners that have been were my friends Billie Jean King and our current president, or past president, Miss Katrina Adams. He's been awarded the USTA's Eve Craft Award, one of the USTA's highest honors. Hollis, man, you left us too soon. You were an inspiration to us all, and you made this amazing sport accessible to all. I can't thank you enough for what you've done for our sport, the Southern California tennis community, and the Black tennis community in LA. And most of all, I thank you personally. Hollis, we miss you, and what you've done, no one else could have done, and we thank God for having you.
Wow, that was awesome. Thank you so much, Henry, for sharing that story. I had only met Hollis the one time when we honored him as a living legend with Pete Brown a number of years ago. And who knew he was a character then, but it sounds like he really made a big impact on the sport. And those are some amazing memories and outstanding achievements on his part for the sport. So thank you so much, Henry, for sharing with us. And we thank Hollis for bringing you to us as well, because since you were honored with Pete Brown, you've been a major participant and volunteer for our program and for the Pete Brown Junior Tennis Program, and our youth have definitely excelled with your involvement. So thank you and for your continued support for our program. So next, we're going to move on to our next honoree. And the panel is speaking on behalf of Mr. Frank Simmons, number one in Los Angeles.
Through the programs of the LA Municipal Tennis Association, it was citywide, so it involved everybody. The blacks in South Central, the Mexicans in East LA, the Europeans in the Valley, the Italians in San Pedro. Everybody got involved in this program, and it was a huge program. Tennis has allowed me to enjoy life by sharing what I knew with others, teaching people to join together, and so I have enjoyed that success, and it makes you feel proud. It makes you understand why you're here.
Okay, awesome stuff. So we have Mr. Art Willis. He is a New Jersey native and has lived in Los Angeles since 1970. He's a longtime member of the Harvest Tennis Club in LA and formerly was a member of St. Andrew's Tennis Club in Manchester in LA. Art has been a board member and treasurer for the Harvest Tennis Club for over 30 years. He knew Frank for many years and played against him many times at Harvard at our weekend tennis gathering. So welcome, Art, for sharing, and we're looking forward to you sharing.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thanks for inviting me to participate. Looks like I lost you. What happened?
You're here.
I'm here? Okay,
yes,
hang on.
Here.
For some reason I lost. Bear with me a moment. Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Yeah. We didn't grow up with computers, so. Anyway, as Crystal mentioned, I'm a transplant from New Jersey. I came to California in 1976. Was transferred out here. I didn't meet Frank until a few years later, I believe. That's a few years ago. When I first got to California, I joined the St. Andrew's Tennis Club on Manchester. And at that time, there were, I think, 4 primary clubs and black clubs in LA, African American: Rancho, Harvard, University, and St. Andrews. And St. Andrews, Manchester, we only had 3 courts, but we were very competitive. And I probably stayed there for several years. And as things happen in tennis, we're not sure what happened, but we all gradually moved over to Harvard, most of the St. Andrews people. And that's when I met Frank Simmons, probably, 2 or 3 years later, along with many, many other people at the Harvard Tennis Club. A few years into it, one of the treasurer at the time decided he was going to retire, and they volunteered me to become treasurer. And they've been voting me in ever since for 30 some years, even though I've never run. So I've been doing that for quite a while. In any event, Frank was an avid player in the tennis community. very competitive on the senior circuit. He was well known in tennis circles locally and nationally and played competitive tennis for over 40 years. Frank was raised in Detroit, Michigan, graduated from Wayne State University in Detroit, and was employed by the federal government of the Veterans Administration as a physical and educational therapist. He retired from government service after 30 years and devoted more time to his tennis playing and holding court at Harvard Park on weekends. Now, holding court for Frank in tennis, especially at Harvard, was both literal and figurative. He was never at a loss for words. And one of his favorite quotes was that the best rule for winning at doubles in tennis was proper partner selection. He became known as number one on the local scene, and he used that description often for himself when he'd had a very successful day playing at Harvard. Frank held for many years, held national and state rankings in tennis and senior doubles. He was born May 9th, 1928 in Miami, Florida. He made his transition on June 4th, 2003 in Los Angeles. Now, in his long career, Frank won many senior doubles titles at the local, state, and national levels. I don't know how many, maybe someone else might have a tally, but I'm sure there are quite a few. And he won that with a variety of partners. These tournaments included those such as the PCC, the Pacific Coast Championships, the ATA, and National Public Parks, and I'm sure a few others. Now, a number of years before his passing, Frank, along with Terry Davis, created the New Year's Day Shootout. It's a round-robin doubles tournament with cash prizes. And this has been held since its inception on New Year's Day at the Jackie Tatum Harvard Recreation Center Park in Los Angeles at Halldale and Gage. It's affectionately known in tennis circles as Harvard Park. This annual event has continued since Frank's passing as a legacy to his memory and his contributions to the LA tennis community. Over the years, this event has become a New Year's Day fixture for the LA tennis community and has also become a sort of annual homecoming get-together for all of LA's African-American tennis club members, tennis fans, and LA tennis players of all persuasions. Frank, his passing in 2003, was survived by his loving wife, Dolores, two daughters, Dr. Joy Simmons and Carol Simmons, JD, and two granddaughters, Naima and Amy. Frank is remembered fondly by all who knew him for his wit, his competitiveness, and his tremendous love for the game and the lifelong relationships that were formed in tennis. Okay, thank you.
Okay, trying to get to my mute button, unmute my button. Wow, just absolutely awesome. Jeff, are you still there to give us some input on this amazing picture that has you with all that hair, dude?
Yeah, well, I'm like I said, I'm gonna see if I can grow it back. But that's we took that. I was just had become president, and we decided we try to get a picture of all the tennis players. I was going to point out because a lot of people we talked about are in that picture, but I don't see it on my screen. If
Deanne can put it back up for you so she can tell you who some of the people. There you go.
Yeah, there I'm on the first row with the well, I can't even think of her name now, was leaning on my shoulder, and I kind of got yellow there. But that's Jeff with the hair and the beard, and then who else? There's Ted Lumpkin on the far right on the first row with his kind of knee standing on bent, on one knee. So that was him. And I think Frank, let me see. Yeah, that's Frank in the very back row. When he looks like the tallest guy.
Yeah.
Frank. And then
Jeff,
right,
isn't Pete in front of him? Is that Pete?
That's Pete Brown right in front of him. Right, exactly. Okay. Yeah, so that's the four. I don't know if Hollis was there. I'm looking to see if I see Hollis. Maybe not. But there was a number of his players that went on to win national championships and so on. But that was the club members that they decided to just kind of one day all get together and take a picture right out in front of Harvard Park. And the guy in the middle kind of with the holding a trophy. I guess that's what's for him. We had what was called a Ted Stoglin trophy. And Ted was, when I started playing, Ted was probably in his 70s or 80s then. And he could whoop on all us little guys, that come out there. He was a really good player. And I didn't know that. Matter of fact, they had me, I was telling them that, look at that old guy out there. They said, well, he can beat you. And I said, no way. The old guy can beat me. So they set up a match, and it was really, really hot that day. We got out there and I said, well, this guy gonna have a heart attack trying to play me, a great athlete. But I didn't know that he had mastered the drop shot and a couple other shots. I played him, and I tell you the absolute truth, cross my heart. And towards the end of the first set, I was so tired. I was so fatigued after running after the shots and running back to try to get them that I had to quit. I said, I quit. But anyway, that was a real character there during that time.
I love the kangaroo hats and the Apple Jacks. Definitely a blast from the past.
Yeah, that was back in the day. We had a lot of ladies playing too. Good players.
Awesome. There's a couple of questions. Thank you so much, Jeff, for that memory. There's a couple of players, a couple of questions. So from Gregory Edmonds, and this question is to the panelists. Did any notable past or present Black pros, such as Arthur Ashe, Gibson, Rodney Hammond, James Blake, Donald Young, Zena Garrison, the Williams sisters, ever connect with any of the honorees at and or any of the Harvard Park activities that you guys know of? You can unmute yourself, guys.
Yeah.
I think Laura Simmons told me today that Serena had been at Harvard Park. I don't know in what capacity, but that's
Well,
what
of
Laura
course.
Simmons.
Can I chime in, guys?
Yes, Mark. Yes,
Well,
Marty.
of course. Serena, Frank Simmons was instrumental in Serena's development. Serena actually played on his team, on his junior team, Southern California junior team. And there's many pictures of Serena at Harvard Park with Frank Simmons. So to answer your question, yes.
Yeah, Arthur Ashe was friends with Hollis, Hollis Smith, and Zena. I think Zena also came when she was in town. She would run into Pete Brown and to come over to Rancho. So in my era, so those people were there. But Arthur came out, and Hollis and Arthur were very involved in setting up that original NJTL.
Okay. Any others have any other memories? Art, you have any memories? You have to unmute. Finding that unmute button.
The other one too is Leslie Allen. She spent a lot of time both with Pete at Harvard and also over at Rancho. Go ahead.
Art.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I had to unmute. No, I was going to say, when I moved over to Harvard from St. Andrews, that was back in probably the late 70s, early 80s. It was, we weren't, the guys we were all kind of veterans, but the lesser players were relegated to the backcourts. The Frank Simmons and the fellows that held them, held the court all the day, they stayed on the first court or two for the crowd. But it was a party almost every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, like all day. Now that was the day, as Jeff had mentioned, we had many ladies playing, but over the years, as tennis has changed, that's obviously declined. But back when it was a heyday, it was we couldn't wait to get there at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning, and we were there literally all day Saturday and Sunday. So it was a great time for tennis and meeting a lot of great people, and those relationships have been maintained over probably 40 years to this day. So it was very good.
Awesome. Ted, there's a question. How old was your dad when he started playing tennis? Do you know that answer?
When he started playing, I mentioned it was just right after the war when he started playing. So he was in, he would have been about 26, 27 like I said, I don't think it really revved up until, sorry, my phone's ringing here. It really didn't get revved up, and I think until the mid to late 60s, 1960s. And then from that point on, he was good to go. And I actually failed to mention the only reason he stopped playing tennis, because my dad was very able to keep moving and everything, well into his 90s. He had basically on a little camping trip, and he was trying to cross a river with his grandkids, and it was like a rope line. He went across some slippery rocks, and he fell down and tried to break his fall with his right arm and wrenched his shoulder, and it was just never the same. He just couldn't play anymore. And he obviously wasn't very happy about it. He even tried to play left-handed for a while, but just didn't work out.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. There's another question in there. What do you think these tennis greats would say about the number of Black women that are actually playing in the sport as pros today?
I can say for my dad, he was very, very proud of the Williams sisters, and he talked about them, quite a bit, and actually talked a little bit about Naomi Osaka before he died. We actually, while he was in the hospital, we were actually having a little chat with the video camera about that. So he was proud of her, and proud of all the other Black tennis players, of course.
Okay, awesome. Anyone, Henry?
Yeah, I'll just add to that one of the things that Hollis loved about going to Indian Wells was when Serena and Venus came back. The fact that they were there before and then they came back. And I think number one would have said also that he predicted it with earlier with Chandra Livingston and Diane Morrison, who reached the top 50. And Leslie, that it was only time before people in Xena that people saw that, and the next round of kids would be even better. So I think they were very they wouldn't be surprised about it.
Okay, Marty and Pete Brown, how would he have had been very proud of these of the women that are actually participating in the sport today?
Oh, of course. Pete Brown's dream was to include Black and brown athletes in the sport. And he helped a lot when he was on the grievance committee for the SCTA. A lot of issues arose, and Pete actually had to confront a lot of racial issues and a lot of discrimination issues, and he handled them pretty well. So he always tried to clear a path of inclusion for our Black and brown players. So of course, I don't think, just like to add on to what Henry said, I definitely think that they saw it coming.
Awesome. James Skinner has a question. When were these clubs established, and are there any publications that tell the history of their existence? And that can come from either probably Art or Jeff. I think you guys all were presidents of Harvard Tennis Club.
I'll let Jeff speak up, but I got to Los Angeles in 1976, and those clubs had been around for quite a while before then. I think Harvard may have been established in the 40s based on some notes I'd gotten when I was treasurer, but I can't give you a date. But they were established, I would say, probably in the 40s and 50s. But when I got here in 76, there were 4 clubs in LA, and for the Pacific Coast group, there was a Mountain View down in San Diego and a couple up in the Bay Area. But exactly when they were formed, I really couldn't tell you. The people that we've talked about, Pete Brown, Frank Simmons, Hollis, they could probably give you specific dates,
This is Jeff. Probably one of the things that would capture some of that is when we had the PCC, Pacific Coast Championship, they published a document every year, and it kind of showed the history, told a little bit about the current club members and some background information. And we started pulling that together as a display. Matter of fact, I did along with some other people. And it went way back, from Oscar Johnson to many of the top players. The days are probably back in the 30s and 40s when some of them were started, but they were not that formal. It was just people gathered together, and they eventually named the club after the people, after the courts that were there. So it was more of an evolving thing, and I think some of them became incorporated. Harvard became legally a 501 with C3 club. I think Rancho was still struggling, but there were clubs, but maybe more. There were several clubs all up and down the coast, and that's why we call them the Pacific Coast Championship up San Francisco. And we would travel. We would switch, and every year a different club would host the PCC, and they took full responsibility of getting the tournaments and arranging it. So it was ongoing when I got there. And because you can imagine, like I said, there were almost 1,000 people that participated in the club in 1978, I guess it was.
Yeah, so, Bakersfield had a club.
Right.
In San Diego.
Sam Pablo.
Just quickly.
Sam Pablo was up north.
Just quickly, guys. A lot of that history was captured by Marcus Freeman, the late Marcus Freeman, who was the writer and founder of Black Tennis Magazine. He captured a lot of that history. So if you go back a bit to probably the 2000s or 90s, you'll see a lot of that history covered in the old editions of the Black Tennis Magazine. So just heads up there. And I'm pretty sure you can go online and see a lot of that stuff, but he captured a lot of that history.
Okay.
It was definitely, I did just add, it was definitely pick a side though. You weren't like some of us pros played at different clubs and we tried, but at the PCC you had to pick a club. And that was that. And there was a lot, it was a big rivalry. It was a lot of fun, and being the PCC champion was a big honor.
Awesome. Before I ask Jeff this question, I'm going to ask Marty this question. Marty, you actually, and I've heard my brother-in-law, there's not too many individuals in Los Angeles that don't know who Pete Brown is and was. And if they learned how to play tennis, they somehow or another, they did that under the tutelage of Pete Brown, my brother-in-law. When we came back to tennis about 4 or 5 years ago, he chose Harvard Park was because he would go swimming over at Harvard Park, at Jackie Tatum Harvard Park. And he also learned, he and his brother, how to play tennis there. And so when my sister gave him a tennis racket for Christmas, he went around the city, he went to Rancho, he went to Gilliam, and he's like, let's go to Harvard. That's where I learned. And that's where he came back over to Harvard, and they asked me to come. I played out at Cheviot Hills, and they invited me to come out. And so we've been there ever since. But Marty, you have had a long history with Pete Brown, which is why you're heading up the program now. Would you like to share that?
Well, of course. I think that's one of my passions. And I know you guys may have heard this story 1,000 times, but Pete actually pulled me out of the community and asked us at a young age of 6, did we want to learn the sport of tennis? We kind of frowned on it a bit. And I think what got us is when he held up a free tennis racket, a new tennis racket, and he said, well, you get a free racket. So Pete was always doing this to many kids that were in the community. And I of course it happened to me. So now I find myself doing it pretty much more than he did. But he was very, very instrumental at getting kids off the streets and out of the community and sharing this wonderful sport with them. So I'm happy that he actually chose me to receive that free tennis racket.
Wow! Did you imagine that you would be the running the program from the age of 6 to today? Did you ever imagine that was on your horizon?
Well, no, because I had so many mentors and wonderful friends and family like Frank Simmons and Hollis and all of these guys. I mean, Henry Brandon, everyone back then, everyone participated in everyone's development and well-being. So it was huge for me. And, I was this young kid that was adopted by all these wonderful people, I think in a great, great time. So I think it just kind of all rubbed off. So I'm really, really happy about that.
Yeah. One comment on Pete Brown, if I may. When they recruited me to become treasurer, one of the primary responsibilities was reimbursing Pete, because especially after Pete retired from Trade Tech, he was very active and driving the kids around in his van, paying for their food, paying for hotels. And as treasurer, the Harvard Club reimbursed him, and I had to write the checks. Pete never asked me for money. The only time I would write a check, it was when Mrs. Brown would call me and said, please send Pete his money. And then I'd have to go through and get Pete to send me the receipts, because his main thing was dealing with the kids. Yeah, but the Harvard Club basically reimbursed him for all the expenses that we had receipts for. But it was not a big deal for him. But Mrs. Brown made sure that he got the money back.
he got reimbursed. And I'm going to ask Art and or probably Jeff. There was a question here. Was it difficult for Pete to start the program?
To start the
Pete Brown for the youth, for the junior program.
Oh well, that's the one that Marty started, But the other one that Pete just naturally fell into it, and there's kind of a miracle story behind that. Over the years, Pete his legs started to fail him, and he had trouble walking a little bit. It got so bad, that he wasn't able to walk too well. Needed a cane, and then I think a walker for a while. But we thought he was gone, because he really couldn't get around. But I remember he was gone for, I don't know, maybe almost for months, maybe over a year. And I came out to the courts and I just walked out there. And I remember looking over there and I saw this senior guy kind of scampering across the courts to another court. And I was like, who is that? So I walked over there and got closer and closer to him. And then he said, hey, Jeff. And I looked, and lo and behold, it was Pete Brown. I said, what? Pete had got a knee, it was a knee replacement, new knees and new hips or whatever he had. And here he was moving like a young kid, moving there. So he is one resilient dude,
He got some new knees and he came back out to the court.
Yeah, he is a tough dude. Yeah. So.
Leslie Allen indicates that Pete counseled her, or him or her, I assume it's her, when I showed up in LA and was in need of a college. Once I walked on at USC, Pete Brown continued to disperse sage advice and had helped me practice at the local clubs. I felt at home, and as I was from the East Coast. So that's a memory from Leslie.
Leslie was if I could just say, Leslie was a top 20 player and the first African-American to win a WTA tournament since Althea Gibson. I mean, she won the Avon of Detroit, I believe it was. So Leslie, quite accomplished, played at SC. And again, as a top 20 player in the world. So Pete had his way with a lot of people.
Yeah, his arm extended all over, it seems, all over Los Angeles. Larry Mulligan Gibbs indicated that discussions bring up an opportunity that we should consider, that being how we can establish a vehicle such as the former Black Tennis magazine to capture the gems coming forward. I would envision an ATA chapter club contributing to the efforts, perhaps an ATA tennis magazine, electronic or physical. So that's a comment. And Deanne indicates that that's something that they can follow up on that idea. Deanne asked the question, do you think tennis is different in California than it is in the rest of the country? Did I lose everybody?
I'm not going to touch that question. I'll let Henry Brand touch that one.
Yeah, go ahead, Henry. Jump on out there.
Back in Pete's day, it was before the tennis academies were really big. It was, and California was kind of the mecca. It wasn't very, very influential, and it was different. You could look at national rankings, and you could see, of the 50 top players, 20 were from California. So a lot of roots here in really good tennis. Pete's best players, that he from his teams were probably Lawrence Cornbread King, who won the National Public Park singles, doubles, and mixed doubles in one year, and Warwick Jones, who basically both had a splendid pro careers. Rick Jones won the ATA at least once, and I know Lawrence King Cornbread was in the finals once, lost to Todd Nelson. I mean, Pete had really good players, and LA was the mecca, especially for black tennis.
I have a question. What do you guys think is the difference between when you guys were all obviously in the 70s and 50s and 60s, comparable to today? What was the attraction to tennis, and how is that different today? Why don't we see the same enthusiasm that we saw that was there in you guys the times you guys started playing tennis?
Video games. This is Jeff. Yeah, a lot of it was now is video games. Kids are playing those things. But during that time, during the early, I guess 70s or 60s, 70s, 80s, the PCC and the tennis was one of, I think, that I recall, one of 4 big events that happened throughout the city, throughout LA Basin. They used to have the frat games with the fraternities. The 4 major fraternities would play a tournament, and it was attended by everybody in the community at different locations. And the other one was the Pacifico Championship. To be able to play and participate in that was such a massive activity. And then it ended up being an event that was up and down the coast. So but tennis kind of faded as time went on because of I think it was kids started playing video games and other things happening, but not so many outdoor things to do, not so many things on TV as much as they are now. So and it affected many sports.
Okay. I'd also say the fact that there were so many black players, and Arthur Ashe was a big impact. I mean, there is no Arthur Ashe now in men's tennis for people to look up for and try to be the next Arthur Ashe. And there were a lot of us trying to do that back then. And then in the women's, I think you're seeing a continuation of what happened in the 70s, where we had Diane Morrison was in the top 50, Leslie Allen was in the top 20, Zena was number 4, Lori McNeil was in the top 10, Chandra Rubin was in the top 10. So the women have consistently brought out top 20 players for people to be role models. And the other thing, there's less choices in women's sports as far as big money. Whereas in the things that are still most popular in our communities are basketball, football, and track and field. So if we got the athletes to play tennis that they did in other countries, we would have more black champions. But our guys kind of tend to don't get that itch, and there it isn't as popular. So it costs a lot of money. That's the other thing.
So do you think, although it's an easier sport to get, it's very similar to football and baseball. I mean, basically you need a racket, but obviously when it comes to going into competitive tennis, it would be very similar to some of the other sports. Would you not think so?
Yeah, well, except tennis it's a year-round sport that you have to play year-round, and most of the better players do. And you have to, have rackets and balls. Whereas basketball, you just a ball. You don't even have to have a ball. Just go to the playground and play. Football, you can't play full year because of the physicalness of it. But guys practice, on the skill parts of it. Tennis is such a skilled and specialized sport. For guys, for women, almost there's a few exceptions, but the pros are kind of determined by the time people are 16 years old. And you just had so it's getting it early and getting the instruction, and that's what Mr. Brown was trying to do, is he was trying to give us all instructions and trying to help us and move us on. And then you get athletes that are late bloomers like Leslie, and she came out and she got the great coaching and was able to be very successful on the pro tour. So I think if we got more people doing that, If you look at the number of college players that are playing tennis versus the number playing football and basketball, there's a huge differential, and we just need to get more people like Kent and Katrina and some of the others that are good athletes playing tennis.
Awesome. And that's going to lead right into our next question from Gregory Edmonds. He says, how much support, and Marty, I imagine this will be a question for you. How much support do you currently receive from the USTA towards building more access to play on higher levels for people of color? And maybe that's a Marty and a Henry question.
I'll let Marty
Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Okay, I just kind of, they do give us support, especially becoming a national USTA Foundation chapter. And they help us with capacity building. So they do give us a percentage, but as you guys know, tennis is super expensive. So it doesn't cover everything, but to answer your question, yes, they do give us a percentage for capacity building.
James Skinner also has another question. How long into the future do you feel it would be before we see an African-American male that will compete for a Grand Slam title? Or will we see that in our lifetime?
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say 3 to 5 years, because we have 3 kids in our pipeline that are heading in that direction. So I'm going to say 3 to 5 years because I'm biased.
Okay. There's also a couple other statements. Gregory Edmonds said tennis could be less expensive to play than golf. We need more support from our top earning athletes and giving back across the line. I would quite agree with you, Gregory. Larry, there was other questions. Leslie actually indicated that there was a difference. California tennis was different than East Coast tennis. LA was all about getting to the next, and the East Coast worked on the point on the clay court. So that's what she felt was different. She was from Ohio. She and Rick Jones grew up there. Let's see. How do you think we can get more boys into the sport? Anyone can jump in there on that one.
No, I can take that one, guys. Of course, I think it's having outreach in a lot of these public parks and recreation centers in these low-income areas, because I think what happens is all kids can't make the basketball team, all kids can't make the football team, and all kids can't make the baseball team. So what I've done is I make sure that I go around to all of these community parks and recreation centers and recruit these young kids. So I think it needs to start there. We need to show these kids all the opportunities that come from playing tennis, and introduce him to a lot of these great legends that have created this huge pathway for excellence. So that's what I think, and that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, I'll add in. I mean, part of the problem is that all they can't make these teams, and tennis can't get the leftovers. I mean, because the other countries in the world are sending their best athletes to play tennis and soccer, and we're not. And when I was up, I'm kind of the same age as a gentleman called John Lucas, who was an All-American in both basketball and tennis. He was an All-American in Maryland tennis, and he was the first player selected in the draft. And which way did he go? He went basketball because the money was there. There are opportunities in tennis. We got to get our kids. They play the sports they're comfortable playing. They play basketball because it's more accepted. And such things as race and economic status aren't as well documented there. I would if we could get people like Boris Becker, who wouldn't be a tennis player if he played in our country, or if we could get kids like LeBron or some of these other kids, they'd be great tennis players. I mean, a guy that big and that fast and that athletic playing tennis, I hate to see it. But right now we're not getting those players are playing other sports.
So you were thinking, Henry, we need more exposure and outreach at a very early age to start developing the young people and to attract them to the sport before they become interested or make a final decision on basketball, football, and baseball.
If you look at Francis,
which I think
Tiafoe,
is very similar.
Yeah, if you look at Francis Tiafoe, he grew up on a tennis court because his parents were worked at the tennis court, and he slept there. And there's a kid who's a tremendous athlete, and if he focuses, he's going to be a tremendous player. And I hope that he hopes to do that. But he's rich, and he's celebrated, and there really isn't. He's got to find something within himself to kind of take that to the next level. But because financially, he's bought his parents' houses, he's done all he could way exceeded anything he wanted to do financially. And now he's got to just decide, I want to be a champion.
There's a comment from Beverly Dawson. Pete Brown legacy expanded with the SoCal juniors due to being able to travel with a large group of young players for competition. Many have never seen a large number of Black kids until the ATA. We took, I think we took 17 children to the ATA 3 years in a row. So it really opened up some opportunities for the young people, and it also helps them. I was a chaperone for one of those trips, and it actually helped them cement some relationships with one another that has extended on 4 or 5 years later. There's a comment from Larry. The ATA can play an inclusive role in developing and introducing new men and women of color by hosting regional events leading to the ATA national tournaments. This could build and fuel our opportunities. So that's that. And then here's another question. How many African-American males are there on scholarship playing Division I tennis?
Marty, I don't know that answer. I don't know if you do.
Yeah. No.
There are some really good players at this time, but college tennis is a international game now and not just a national game. So it has taken down the numbers of Americans and also the number of Black Americans.
Okay. Let's see. Do we have any other questions that were there? Leslie said there's a lot of history and stories in Black tennis, and we need to document them for the next generation to learn and then be inspired by. We all agree with you, Leslie. And we're coming close to the end of our wonderful presentation. Deanne, do you want to interject or?
No, I think we have all the questions. I think Maurice had a question. Did you answer that one about how many are playing D1 tennis?
Yeah, I'll add to that. On the problem also in men's tennis at Title IX, there's only 4.5 scholarships on a men's team. So, most of the kids aren't getting full scholarships. So a full ride in tennis is much less unlikely than it is. And women's tennis has 8. So in women's tennis, you can get a full ride. But men's tennis is very competitive, and coaches want to win. And sometimes some of the foreign students probably aren't exactly worried about the school and the academic part as well as they're more worried about winning. And coaches are paid to win. So sometimes Americans, and especially Black Americans who really need to go and graduate and need that for future earnings are left behind.
Okay. Leslie also indicated that some of the issues is that there are opportunities in tennis. However, our kids play the most popular sport, but they do not face such institutional racism like they do in tennis. Anyone have a comment, a statement on that one?
Other than she's right?
No, I definitely agree. I definitely agree with that also, and I think that's one of the issues. How can we have it broke through? So I agree with that. Right on point.
Okay. Herta indicates I've researched Black tennis globally since 2007, and I was on schedule to publish my book last year, but I was delayed and anticipate publishing something sometime next year. Larry indicates let's start an ATA scholarship. Scholarships targeting either men or women of color, funding them from members of the for members in the ATA clubs. I highly agree with that. I come from the ski world, and that's exactly what we did. Our adult programs actually supported our youth programs, and we raised monies with doing the major carnivals and ski summits and conferences that we did, and that way we could send the kids through training, because skiing, just like tennis, is a very expensive sport. Gregory Edmonds says, happy to see Coco Golf doing well. Any comments about her potential? She gets good support from her parents. Anyone have any?
She's an incredible athlete, and she has incredible potential. She has some things technically that she needs to clean up, and I'm sure she's working with Roger Federer and his people, and Serena's coach Patrick. I'm sure some of her stroke production will be better, but she's a bigger person. She's faster than 99% of the people out there, and she's very powerful. I mean, it's the things you have. I mean, as I said, if she can clean up some of her strokes, she's going to be a force to reckon with, similar to Serena. Yeah.
Awesome. Stan Smith says, I learned quite a bit tonight, and I grew up in SoCal. I think that my friend Arthur would have learned a lot as well tonight. Thanks for doing this, Stan Smith. You guys have actually shared some amazing information about this sport. You have a true passion and love for this sport. And I guess we just need to continue to pass that on and inspire our young people so they will be enthused to continue on in the sport and develop relationships that you guys have developed.
Yeah, Stan Smith was a great champion, was #1 in the world, was a good friend of Arthur Ashe's. I've seen him at many things that we did for the Arthur Ashe Foundation, and also, his wife Jeannie Ashe has had things, and Stan and his wife have been big supporters, Marjorie. So I think the fact that we get a former #1 player, a Wimbledon champion on, thank you so much, Stan, for attending and listening, and thanks for all you've done for Black tennis and being such a good friend to Arthur.
Okay. Any other parting comments from our panelists in regards to the sport as we begin to wrap up?
I'd like to close with a remark. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. And I agree that the ATA and several organizations should get together and really support our youth, because we had a really, really huge kid here, a Black kid, that actually got to the finals of the sectionals, the Southern California sectionals. And this was a historic run for this kid. I don't think there has ever been a Black kid that has gotten to the finals of a Southern California sectionals ever. And I think this was a historic feat. And now he has no support. He's basically out there on an island, and his mom and dad are looking for support. So if we can't get behind this kid, to put him on the radar, because he's done some huge stuff here in Southern California, and it's getting overlooked.
Well, you talk to us about that, Marty, and let's see what we can do. This is Deanne. The kids are the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, the kids are the future, so we definitely need to support them and help make our champions. It takes a village. So, Crystal,
it does.
Awesome job, Crystal. You guys did an awesome.
Thank you, Dia. Just before we wrap up, I do want to share, we have 5 kids that we're just so proud of. I believe it may be 6 kids. We have a couple kids, one going to, one is at Clark, one is going to Howard next year. We have one going to Harvard next year. Who else, Marty? We have one at Berkeley. We have a young lady that Katrina Scott, she was part of our program in her early years before she went pro. So here at Pete Brown, we're working very hard to help develop these kids that can get to the top of this sport. So we thank you all for your support, and please help us cheer on these young people so that they can find their way in this world, because the future, Deanne, you're absolutely right, is our future, is our kids.
Yes. So thank you, everyone. And I want to thank the panel. I'm going to have Roxanne come back on and just send us out for the night.
Hello again. And every time I do this, I have a hard time getting off mute and getting myself back on camera. So I'm going to work real hard on that, because we have lots more webinars to come your way. But I want to thank Crystal, Jeff, Henry, Art, and Ted, for Ted Jr. for joining us tonight. And I really want to thank Marty, because Marty and I talked 2 weeks, I think it was about 2 weeks ago. I called him and I said I wanted to do something to talk about those heroes that we don't talk about that much. And Marty jumped right on it and together with his team put this together. These 4 tennis pioneers that we talked about, what I like is that they have made a contribution to future tennis champions, and their love for tennis and their hope and wishes for the future for junior tennis. And that is one of our missions as the ATA. We are looking for the next heroes in tennis. So we hope that you continue to join us. We hope that you continue to follow the ATA, because we're looking forward to our future and what we can do for is inspiring young generations in tennis. And next month is Women's History Month. So keep following us, because we're going to do something around women of color in tennis. So thank you again. I hope you have a good rest of the weekend, and thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Peace and blessings.
We appreciate it. Thanks,
Thanks,
you guys.
guys.
All right.
Thank you.